doctor has been much maligned over the years through history, unfairly so, I think, through my research. He's been referred to as an incompetent. He's also been referred to, even worse, as a drunken incompetent. And that's a very unfair evaluation of the Civil War doctrine. When the war started, you have to remember that really neither side, the South didn't have an army at all, they were a nation. The North only, the United States had an army of about 15,000 men, and they were mostly out west, taking care of the settlers. And of course, when the states started seceding, they had 113 surgeons in the army. But 24 of those resigned and came back south to their home. And so when the war started, both sides had less than 100 physicians. Okay, and we know the magnitude of this war. At the end of the war, the North had over 13, from less than 100 to over 13,000 surgeons. The South, from less than 100 to over 3,500. Of course, the difference is the size of the army.
Sure.
The Union Army was probably 3 times. If you take those figures, the Army was 3 times larger than the Confederate Army. So, pretty much, they were desperate for anybody, especially doctors. And so, if you had any kind of medical training, anything, then you would be made the physician of the regiment. And so the governors were appointing physicians. Well, we know what government appointments are, My buddy wants to be a physician, so okay, I'll put you in as a regimental surgeon over here. Well, even worse than that, the regiments elected their own surgeon from their ranks. Who's got some medical experience? Well, I'm from the farm. I know something about So he was elected the physician. So yes, you had some very incompetent people, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And they realized that. And so as the war dragged on, and I tell everybody, you really have to divide the war into 2 halves. The first half was very much a learning on-the-job training experience. The second half, they had it together. Okay, they had learned how to do things and do them right. It was. When the war started, the first Battle of Manassas. Neither side anticipated what they were about to get into. They thought a couple of battles, this thing is over. We all go our separate way. That's it. But we all know differently. The first Battle of Manassas, they were ill prepared for that battle. Men laid out on the field 2 or 3 days straight, just dying. They had no idea how to get them off the field. What do we do with these thousands of men that are just lying out there? So they came up with an evacuation system. It's the same evacuation system the Army uses today. It was established in the Civil War. Of course, the equipment is more modern, but the system is basically the same system. So they learned how to get the men off the field quickly. They also learned that they also learned if they could do surgery within the first 24 hours of the wound, the mortality rate was much better. Or the mortality rate was much lower. So they learned if they could do surgery in 24 hours. And early in the war, the surgeons were given the authority to decide if surgery was needed and what kind of surgery was needed. So these young physicians, they're excited because they're learning things they knew nothing about. So were there some surgeries that were unnecessarily done? Yeah, there were. Just because they were anxious to learn how to do all this. So later in the war, several things happened. Number one, the state set up examination boards, and they began to examine all these doctors. They examine them for promotion. They examine them for entry into the Army. They examine those that were in the Army, and they began weeding them out. Okay? Got rid of them. It took a while, but they got rid of them, and they got qualified people. And the governors were no longer allowed to appoint physicians. So you can imagine the governors were very unhappy.
Yep.
Because now that had taken away their authority of appointments. They were no longer elected by their regiments. Now they were qualified physicians. And these examining boards were pretty gruesome, apparently, because they lasted anywhere from 3 to 6 days of written and oral examination.
That's where the term the boards come from.
Yeah,
Still
the
used
boards.
today.
Yeah. And so the one young man was going through this examination, and it's documented that one of the physicians, and there's like 3 or 4 physicians would be the board. And so one physician asked this young man, he said, young man, he said, what would you do? And apparently this has really been grueling on him, and he was really stressed. And he said, young man, what would you do if I had a gunshot to the knee? The young man thought for a moment. He said, you know what? If it was your knee, I wouldn't do a damn thing. People ask me if he passed the examination. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, really.
But he had just had it.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was drained.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do a damn thing for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and it's interesting that they learned. You were talking about the ambulance corps. The ambulance corps early in the war was run by the quartermaster's corps department.
Right.
And they were very inefficient. If they got to the battlefield at all, they got there late. Okay, terribly inefficient. Well, so the medical corps took over the ambulance corps. Much more efficient. They were there when they were needed to be. They did what they needed to do. Now, what they did, again at the beginning of the war, if I'm a regimental surgeon, the regimental surgeon's responsible for 1,000 men. Okay. So if my regiment has no injuries in a battle, and the guy down the street here from me, his regiment has, say, 300 wounds out of a battle. Well, I don't help him because I don't have any dog in this hunt, I don't think, because my men are okay. So he's kind of left on his own.
Wow.
So the medical corps said, this don't work. So they began combining them for a major battle. And so then everybody helped everybody. Okay. So, and what they did, they learned to do triage.
Yeah.
The assistant surgeon to the regiment was sent out to the edge of the battlefield, and he would set up a triage unit, and the stretcher bearers would be out there. As the men start falling during the battle, the stretcher bearers, talk about brave men, they go run out there, get him, and bring him back to the surgeon, the assistant. And he treats them for emergency, life-saving kind of stuff. And then from there, the field hospitals would be located in various places. One of the surgeon's jobs was to go out prior to a battle, and they usually knew when there was going to be a battle and where it was going to be. So his job was to go out and secure houses, set up tents, shade trees, whatever he had available to him in that area. So it was his job to go do that. So he would go to this house, for example, and he would say, okay, we're going to secure your house for hospital. And the families were always welcoming to that, helpful. The ladies would help nurse, make bandages, whatever they needed to do. And so surgeries are done in houses oftentimes. Now, if you're from Franklin, I assume you've been to Carton Mansion.
Yeah.
Okay. The surgeons there did surgery on the second floor. The arms and legs were stacked up to the second floor. That's how many amputations they did just in that one hospital.
Yeah.
Now all those buildings in town were used as hospitals. That's just one hospital. Okay. So they would go in and they would secure it, and they would take the doors off the hinges, and that would be their operating tables. Yeah. So, but from the field hospital, from the triage, they were brought here. This where all the surgeries were done. Okay, this is a transitory place. They don't stay here. They don't recuperate here. They put them on ambulances, trains, ships, whatever they got. Get them to the major cities where the bigger hospitals are. That's where they'd have any additional surgeries, recoup time. Okay, so this is just a transitory place. Now, this is the first. You're familiar with MASH?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This regimental hospital was the first MASH.
Yeah.
This hospital went wherever the regiment went.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything, of course, is mobile. It would fold up, put it on wagons, and sometimes the hospital wagon train would be 30 miles long with large hospitals. With all the stuff they had. Yeah.
Just going back a second to the qualifications of the doctors.
Yeah.
So did they draft the surgeons out of the major hospitals to get? Because there weren't that many medical schools. I mean, my great-grandfather went to Harvard.
Yeah. At the beginning of the war, there was about 86 medical schools.
Okay, there were that many. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, the University of Nashville, which turned into Vanderbilt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There were a lot of them.
Okay, there were a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, medical schools is another interesting topic. How they started was that some of the doctors in the area would say, let's start a medical school.
Mm-hmm.
So they would go to the university or college or whatever school was around their area, and they would go talk to them. And so it was a moneymaker for the college, so they were welcoming it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the doctors, they made their money by selling tickets to their lectures. The students had to buy tickets to their
Really?
lectures.
Huh.
And that's how the doctors, that's how the professors made their money.
Okay.
The colleges made their money by admission
Yeah.
fees and graduation fees.
Okay.
Okay. Now medical school was 2 years long. Okay. Not really even 2 years. Basically 2 semesters. They would go from October to March. Now, what happens from March to October? That's when the farmers grow their crops.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids were from the farms,
Okay.
so they had to go home in the summertime,
Oh.
help the family at the farm,
Okay.
and then come back to medical school the next year.
Okay.
So, and they had almost literally no practical experience. It was all lecture.
All lecture. Yeah.
Cadavers in those days were kind of frowned upon.
Yeah. Yes.
So they didn't use. I have seen pictures of cadavers.
Yeah.
But they were really the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
It was just simply a lecture. And there's another problem for the Civil War surgeon. He's had no practical experience. Prior to the war, doctors did not go inside the body. They practiced medicine. They gave you medicine.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And
Right.
the Civil War changed all that. So one of the innovations that came out of the Civil War was surgery itself.
Yeah.
I mean, these doctors learned how to do surgery. They took all those skills back to their towns and their villages and their cities, and were much more skillful at the end of the war than they ever thought about being at the beginning of the war.
You would have thought they would have learned a little bit from the Europeans with all the European Napoleonic wars and talk about massive deaths on the battlefield.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they didn't. So, but again, breaking the war down into 2 halves. That just for an example to show you how much it improved, the mortality rate prior to Gettysburg was if you got shot, you had a 25 to 30% chance you were going to die. After Gettysburg, the mortality rate went down 9.5%.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a curve.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge,
Yeah.
huge, because of all these things they learned.
Yeah.
Quick surgeries, fast
off the
surgeries,
field
get
faster.
them off the field quickly.
A little more cleanliness.
Well, no, they didn't really. That
They didn't get too far
help,
with that?
No,
Okay.
that didn't help out much.
Okay.
No. And nobody regretted after the war not knowing about those things more than the doctors did. I mean, they made speeches and they said, "We are so sorry." Listers and pastures, all those studies, sterilization, all came in the 1870s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think partly because of the war.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They began to realize there was something about cleanliness
Yeah.
They didn't know what or why.
And so there were no antibiotics.
Nah, there were no
not
So
till
that
antibiotics.
wasn't. That was not.
1920s.
No, I
No.
guess that. Yeah, that. Wow.
The surgeons did some 55,000 amputations in the Civil War because of this bullet right here.
Yep.
This is a devastating bullet to a man's body.
50 caliber.
This is a 58 caliber,
58. Yeah.
and it's shot out of this 58 caliber rifle right here. And this rifle right here is by far the biggest killer of the Civil War.
It's heavy.
This rifle is responsible for about 94% of the wounds in the Civil War. This rifle. Okay. If as this bullet comes out of this rifle and it's spiraling, okay. So as it enters the man's body, it's carrying obviously bacteria,
Yep.
clothing,
Clothing.
and as it goes through your body, it's rifling, it's ripping, and it's tearing, and it's sharing, and it's also flattening out. Okay, so there's
So
some
the
bullets
exit-
over here that you see are almost flat, so it gets bigger. Okay, and so it just rips whatever gets in its way. And if it should hit his arm or leg bone, it's shattered. It's shattered. Okay, and so the only way to save the man's life obviously was to amputate him. That's why they did 55,000 amputations. And I tell kids, I said, it's not because they were mean, you know.
Yeah.
It's because they're trying to save the guy's life. You know, better not to have an arm than to die,
Yeah.
I guess. And but they learned to do amputations really quickly. They now one of the biggest misunderstandings, perhaps one of the